already got a sense of where the defense is coming from here. We get a sense from the prosecutors that that is the defense, wasted its time in their argument, going so far to say that there's absolutely no evidence that the defendants in this case, their due process rights, have been harmed in absolutely any way, even acknowledging this relationship in the first place that you had to drag out of them to get in the first place. But what do you make of that this did not move the needle or affect the case that they're prosecuting?
Well, this judge has really tough decisions to make on a number of fronts before he actually gets to his decision. One of those is what he's going to apply here. Does he have to find an actual conflict, which would require more of that concrete discussion that you're talking about, those facts that the defense says they don't have? Or is it the appearance of a conflict? And you heard that the attorneys who were arguing for some of the Trump co-defendants saying there's this 2005 case in Georgia from their Supreme Court that lets you look at the appearance of conflict. You don't have to actually have the conflict. He's also got to make a decision about all those cell phone records that one of the co-defendants is trying to enter into evidence. All of the texts, the phone calls, the location, thousands of bits of information. Whether that gets in or not is also a big piece of this case. So the judge will have to get through a lot of, factual and legal issues before he actually gets to making a decision about whether it means disqualification here.
All right. Is that it, though? Katie, the one thing I was curious about, it's one thing to say, all right, Fani Willis, you have to go. This is just deplorable behavior. It makes everyone look bad. Nathan Wade, you too. Or can he go even further than that? This case is exploding. We start from scratch. I mean, what are his sort of ground rules for himself?
Well, the issue that he's deciding at this point is a motion to disqualify specifically. So it's not necessarily a motion to dismiss, but the decision he makes could have collateral impacts on what happens moving ahead and whether this case can even move forward. One of the questions that the judge asked that I thought was very interesting was if he is to find some sort of forensic misconduct, such as perjury or lack of candor to the court, would that then impact every other indictment that Fani Willis, as the district attorney, signed in the county? And that is an astronomical thought to have in terms of what kind of damage control would need to be done. But certainly that would apply here, even if another DA's office were to pick this up. So the ethical mess is very complex, but for the purposes of what he's deciding in this motion and in the order, it will be a determination of whether they are disqualified from this proceeding in particular.
So let's say you're part of Donald Trump's legal team here, Andy, and let's say she was dismissed. And bottom line, she's gone. Nathan Wade is gone, but the trial continues. Do they still have grounds for appeal to say, look, this started out as a circus, and we're not sure it's going to resume any less?
Well, a big question, Neil, would be, is it just Fani Willis and Nathan Wade who would be out of the case, or is it the entire Fulton County District Attorney's Office? It occurred to me watching this, and obviously this has been an issue throughout these proceedings, but there may have been a couple of different ways you could have handled this. The way the Fulton County DA's office decided to handle it was to jump in with both feet as the advocate for Fani Willis and Nathan Wade. And it just seems to me that they've kind of attached themselves at the hip to their principles. And maybe that was the way that the boss wanted it. But it's hard for me to believe at this point, the way this was all conducted, that you could potentially disqualify one or both of Wade and Willis and not also disqualify the office. I think they either all have to go, or I think the office will go if Willis has to be disqualified. The other thing I would just think about is, in the Trump camp, if I were in it, is the practical effect of this. You have March 25th, we're going to have what looks like a 4 to 6 week trial, as it's now being estimated, in New York in connection with the Manhattan DA's case. And in South Florida today, they're having argument over when they're going to schedule the Mar-a-Lago documents case, where they seem like they have a window because of the complications of the Washington case. You do get to a certain point where you say to yourself, when on earth is this case going to be tried? There's no trial date here on the horizon, and you're running out of days on the calendar, especially if you have Willis looking at a re-election campaign.
You know, another thing that comes up, guys, is just the timeline on this relationship and more, and all the other parties who might or might not have been aware of that, but now are. And I don't know how that confuses things, but I did know with the timeline that, oh, this was a lot more involved than I thought. I want, Shannon, if you can just respond to the series of timeline bites on who knew what and when. Take a look.
How does the timing of the relationship impact a financial interest?
Because it's part of the scheme she created intentionally in order to give benefits to her boyfriend. They know that if Your Honor finds that that relationship started in 2019, that the appointment of Wade itself was improper, and if that was improper, then he had no business as an average citizen, along with the fact that they didn't have approval from Fulton County to appoint him in the first place. That undermines the indictment. It creates a structural impairment in the indictment because he had no more business being in the grand jury room than I did. So that's what they're worried about. And the reason why it's important for the financial piece, Judge, is it's how the money ended up going back to her. She put her boyfriend in the spot, paid him, and then reaped the benefits.